Hello, DaVo here from the Axiom Body Piercing Studio in Des Moines, Iowa, located inside the Skin Kitchen. Today, in this video, I'm going to be going through aftercare instructions for ear piercings. So, what we're going to be covering today is ear piercings. This covers a lot of different piercings on the ear. There are a number of them. So this would include, though they vary a little bit in healing time, and each one has its own unique little ways of being grumpy and annoying and taking longer and being tender and this and that, a majority of them can be healed out in this with using these methods. And when we're talking about ear piercings, we're talking about lobe piercings, upper ear cartilage, Helix, Daith, Rook, Tragus, Anti-Tragus, Snug, Conch, industrials, and orbits. Before we get into that, though, I want to kind of give a disclaimer. I've been in this business for a long period of time, and one thing that has always changed is the aftercare instructions. Though these ones that I'm going to be going in today, I've been using off and on for, well, I've been using for over 5 years. There's thousands of people that have healed their piercings out using these instructions. But today is April 30th, 2018. This is what I suggest on this date. That may change as more information, more research. We learn things as we go along. Just like any young industry, it's always evolving, hopefully. Now, another thing, I always sit down with my clientele and we'll go through these instructions verbally after we've done the piercing. Also, they always get a sheet. And on the sheet is basic outline of what needs to be done, what you need to do it, etc. On the back, additional information. And at the bottom, information about the piercing, including what jewelry size, style, type, what material is, when it was done, who did the piercing, and what the average healing time is on that particular piercing. Healing times. Well, back to that. I think it's very important that that you have that time to do that interaction with your piercer as a client, so that you can ask questions. Something may not make sense to you if you just read it out. I'm not a big fan of people just going, "Here's a sheet, see ya," or "Here's a card, see ya. Keep it clean." Like that's some way of telling people how to heal a piercing. My job, as I have always felt, ends once that piercing is healed, which may take 2, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, even a year. So, into the root of it. Let's get into some more stuff here with the aftercare. I basically look at aftercare as being kind of 4 different parts. The first part being we're trying to help the body produce and give it the nutrients and care and etc. that it needs to produce those that tunnel of tissue around the jewelry, and so it's no longer an open wound. The second part is we're human. We make mistakes. You're probably going to make 1 or 2 of them during a healing process because we're not used to having an open wound in our body for a long period of time. So there needs to be a precaution to reduce the amount of pathogens in the area, done on a daily basis at a regular time, just to kind of reduce that possibility even further for infection or other problem. The third thing is cross-contamination prevention. It's relearning some of the ideas that we have about the environment around us. We are constantly in contact with foreign pathogens and organisms and etc. that can enter our body through a piercing and cause an infection. So limiting that amount of exposure is what cross-contamination is about. The fourth thing is behavioral changes. Now, this might involve everything from not sleeping on the piercing to what you wear to how you answer the phone. These are things that we need to cover. So, when I generally send somebody down, we're starting to go, they've got the piercing, they're like, "Oh God, it's awesome, everything's great, here's how to take care of it." Basic shopping list. sea salt, which you can find in the baked goods aisle of any good grocery store. It's also really good on French fries, and it's supposed to be healthier for you. Distilled water, which you can find in the beverage aisle. If you can't find it there, check next to the infant care section. Sometimes they'll put it next to the formula for one reason or another. Don't know why. Marketing, I guess. Third thing is a mild antibacterial, antibacterial soap. I can never pronounce that thing. That's why I've always stuck with antibacterial soap. Anyway, you want something that doesn't contain a lot of moisturizers, fragrances, or other additives. For example, if it has a long list of ingredients or a long description, like moisturizing summer breeze or blueberry pancakes, surprise waterfall, that is not what you want. Probably the most common or easy to find is Dial Antibacterial Liquid Soap. It's the good old-fashioned Dial Gold, I believe is what it's called now. They've remarketed it a few times. It's the orangish stuff. It'll be right next to all of their hand soaps. If you want to go with something completely natural, I would suggest grapefruit seed oil-based antibacterial liquid soap. You can find it at good health food stores, even larger grocery stores and department stores. If they handle a lot of organic products, they'll probably have it. If you want to go to the pharmacy level, satin or Proven would be your best options. The other things you want to have on hand is plenty of clean paper towels. You could pick up some sterile gauze at your local pharmacy. That would be an additional thing. If you plan on doing soaks opposed to compresses, which we'll get into in a second, some type of disposable bowl or container is not a bad idea. At least it's easier to keep it clean, etc. So you want to do the soaks first. To do that, soaks or compresses. Guess I should explain this. Soaks are always more effective. However, because of the location of most of the piercings, they're very difficult to do. There's really only basically 3 or 4 different methods. If it's a hanging piercing like a lobe, sometimes you can get away with, and your lobes happen to be detached, you can get away with kind of submerging the piercing into the water itself. The other method is putting a shallow bowl on like a countertop, something kind of shaped like that, and then sitting here like this for 10 minutes twice daily. Third one is to find some type of container that you can fill up, tilt your head sideways, stick over it, and then rotate back and try to create or keep a seal on that for 10 minutes. For most people, that's too much of a hassle. So what I ask is, if you're not going to do soaks, your second best option is compresses. At least do those. Now, first off, we have to mix up the mixture. You take a cup of the distilled water, and when I say cup, I mean a measured cup, 8 ounces of the distilled water. Put it in the microwave. Heat it up about the same period of time you would if you were warming up coffee or cocoa. That temperature we're going for is what would be comfortable in a shower or a bath. Hot, but not scalding. Drop in 1/8 of a teaspoon and 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt. Let it dissolve. Should taste about as salty as your own tears. If you're going to do the soaks, fill up the container and either submerge or soak the water or the piercing for 10 minutes. If you're going to do the compresses, take a clean paper towel, fold it up, or a sterile piece of gauze sponge, soak up the substance, lay it against the piercing, constantly re-submerging as it cools so it stays warm for 10 minutes. You want to do it before you do the cleaning in the shower for a couple different reasons. First off, it's going to help break up the discharge and make it a little easier to clean. The other reason is we want to rinse off the saline mixture. The salt crystals with certain individuals can cause issues if they're left against the piercing. So it's a good idea, even if you're not going to shower immediately, to at least rinse it under running water, just to be on the safe side. What it helps to do is it draws waste and debris from the piercing, increases circulation and the flow of oxygen, which can help with healing. The salt actually contains some minerals and nutrients that are helpful in your body's production of skin cells, and it really helps to soothe it. Piercings sometimes will just go through grumpy phases no matter how well you take care of them. And this is one of those things that you can do to kind of make things feel better and get things back on track. The other part you do in the shower. First off, take care of all of your normal bathing duties first. In case you get some hair product or body wash or something on the piercing, you're rinsing it away right away. Once you've done that, wash your hands. Spray the water directly onto the piercing to remove any discharging that's deposited on the jewelry. Take that soap we talked about earlier, squirt out just a small pearl drop on the palm of your hand. Lather it up well so you're diluting it. We don't want to put it on there full strength. It's too harsh. Gently apply it to the piercing area. Let it stay in contact for 30 seconds. Now, you're in the shower. You probably don't have a clock in there. So you're like, well, how am I supposed to know it's 30 seconds? 30 seconds is generally equivalent to singing 2 times through Mary Had a Little Lamb, Happy Birthday, or pretty much any childhood song. Also, signing the Pledge of Allegiance twice is approximately 30 seconds. Once you've done that, rinse under running water, and then after you get out of the shower, patty dry with a clean paper towel. You want to do both of those things twice daily for at least the minimum healing time, which on most ears is 2 months or 8 weeks. Or until your body stops producing or depositing that lymph discharge, the hard, crusty stuff on the jewelry, and the piercing cells get kind of an indented or ingrown look to it. If you look at most lobe piercings, like most people have their earlobes pierced, you'll notice they're not flat like this. They have this kind of tucking in that happens. And what has happened is that tissue's formed all the way around the jewelry to the very center, and then it'll kind of pull inward and give it that kind of natural curvature. Seems still to you, if you're not sure, stop by your piercer and ask. I'm sure they'll be happy to take a couple minutes out of their day and take a look and go, yeah, hey, that's healed, good job. Or go, yeah, you probably want to take care of that for a couple more months. Don't need to start the process of doing the soaks or compresses or the cleaning in the shower till the next day. I generally suggest that you give it until that you start that process the next morning. So give your body kind of a little bit of a break. Let that piercing clot kind of simmer down a little bit. Then work on it the next day. Cross-contamination prevention. Common sense stuff. Wash your hands before you handle it. Try to handle it by the ball end or seamed area whenever possible. Generally, you want to kind of pick the spot that doesn't really actually go into the piercing is your best bet. That's why I've always been a huge fan of rings, because you just have that ball to hang on to if you need to. The only time you really have any contact with the piercing is when you're cleaning it or when you're checking the tightness of the ball, if it's one of the ones, the threaded ends, or making sure that the seam is on the outside of the piercing if you're using a seamless ring to heal out your piercing. Rest of the time, leave it alone. Also, keep everybody else's germy little fingers away from it. Understand that microorganisms like bacteria and other pathogens do move on the surface of your skin. So anytime you touch the area, you want to wash your hands before you do so. At some point in your life, you might have been told to spin, rotate, or move jewelry, because if you didn't do that, it was going to become permanently affixed to your body. That is impossible. That is not going to happen. Constantly moving or rotating the jewelry is just going to increase your likelihood of infection by overhandling the jewelry, possibly dragging contaminants into the piercing, and more importantly, dislodging new skin growth. As that tissue forms, like I was talking about earlier, it can be very thin, very fragile, and often tight. So if you go in there and start moving it around all the time, you're going to break loose skin growth, and it's going to prolong your healing period, which increases your likelihood of infection, and you have to do all this longer. So there's no reason to move it. Naturally, gravity is going to move it a little bit here and there. If you do have to adjust the jewelry for one reason or another, you always want to do it directly as soon as you get out of the shower, and make sure that your hands are cleaned well. No oral contact or exchanging of bodily fluids on, near, or around the piercing until it heals. That does include your own saliva. I've never understood why people think it's safe to lick their fingers and clean things. Don't do that. It's disgusting, and your saliva is full of bacteria and other fun-filled microorganisms. Keep your environment clean. Clothing, bedding, towels, anything that may come in contact with it. A way to get around constantly changing your pillowcase is to get an old, comfortable, soft t-shirt that's clean. Put it over your pillow, sleep on one side, sleep on the other side, turn it inside out, sleep on one side, sleep on the other side. That way you get roughly about 4 days out of it. Also, because they sometimes bleed a little bit those first couple nights, it cuts down the likelihood of staining the pillow in the pillowcase. Keep pets away from it. Do not let them sleep in the bed with you. I'm constantly surprised by this one. If you just spend 5 minutes watching your cat, dog, ferret, or parrot, or whatever you have, wander around the house and watch what type of activities they do, and then consider that they're taking all of that into your freshly clean linen, you understand why I would suggest not having an open wound against any material that has came in contact with that pet. Also, avoid contact with telephones, especially smartphones. Basically, they are a petri dish full of full of contaminants that hide in our pocket. If you really knew what was on that thing, you'd probably never put it close to your mouth again. Make sure you're answering with the other ear. This is one of the reasons why I generally suggest doing one and then the other. Behavioral changes. Sleeping is a big thing. If you absolutely have to sleep on that side, you want to figure out some way of elevating the piercing off the bed. Most common or easy way to do that is kind of make a nest for it. Take a big fluffy bath towel that's clean, roll it up, put it in the shape of a donut, and sleep your ear in the center of the donut so it's elevated off the bed. I've also had clients use hemorrhoid pillows, you know, those giant blow-up donuts, and those U-shaped Nick pillows or travel pillows. Some people will kind of squish the pillows to one side and kind of take the pressure off. Whatever works for you. You do not want to sleep on a piercing. We don't realize how much we move around in our sleep. We have no idea how much abuse we were doing to the piercing because we're asleep. We don't know what we're doing. And I see a lot of problems caused by this, where perfectly fine piercings are healing. They're doing great. Everything's wonderful. And then the person goes, it's healed enough. I'll sleep on it tonight. And then suddenly they have issues. Also, if you use anything that comes out of a spray can or squirt bottle in your hair, you want to shield it with folded up paper towel. When you go see the beautician, make sure they do the same thing. I'm always leery of that bottle of water they use to dampen your hair as they trim it. What exactly is in there and when it was changed last. Also, a lot of times they may use something that has a lot of chemicals in it that may not react well to the open wound. The other thing is make them fully aware that you have a healing piercing and to stay away from it. It never fails to get a little overzealous with the combing and the brushing, and then they get distracted, and the next thing you know, they caught it. It hurts. It really, really hurts, and it can tear or damage a piercing. And that's something you want to probably continue even after it's healed. Jewelry. You want to leave that piece of jewelry in that it's pierced with until the piercing is healed. Removing the jewelry during the healing process can be a very traumatic experience for the piercing. It can cause issues. After it heals, if you wish, you can change it to another piece of jewelry. However, you do want to only take it out to replace it for roughly the next 2 to 3 years. Understand, regardless of how long you've had that piercing, if you remove the jewelry and leave it out long enough, your body will reconnect the tissue and close the piercing. I know there's people out there that say they've had their earlobes open for 20 years and never wore anything in them. If you begin to ask them questions like, did it hurt when you put the jewelry in? Or did it bleed? You begin to realize that the piercing is not open. They're just reopening it over and over again. So, good idea. If you like it, leave something in it. I personally never charge to change jewelry. Most reputable piercers won't charge for it. Also, I'll autoclave or sterilize the jewelry if you ask me to, for free too. I'd much rather change a piece of jewelry than try to explain how to do it over the phone or through email, or watch a client lose a piercing because they couldn't get the jewelry back in. It sucks. When pick out jewelry, use some common sense. It's got sharp edges, points, things dangling off of it, or it seems extremely heavy. It's probably going to be damn uncomfortable and constantly get cotton snag down everything it comes in contact with. Usually, the more simplistic the jewelry is, the better off you are. If you see a piece of jewelry and you're not quite sure if it's going to work or not, don't hesitate to consult your piercer or me. I'm happy to give you advice regardless of where you're spending your money. Also, if you look at my website, AxiomPiercing.com, I list roughly 4 different places I suggest buying jewelry online. The reason why I like those 4 sites is they list the manufacturer right next to the jewelry, so you have an idea of where it came from, who made it, what the quality of the jewelry is, and what it's in fact actually made out of. Opposed to going to the mall or a department store or your local head shop or gas station, or buying things on Etsy, eBay, or Amazon where you have no idea where these people are buying their jewelry and what it's actually in fact made out of. Lastly, infections, very infrequent. Some of the creeps I've done some to you, get in contact with your piercer or myself immediately, or seek professional medical advice. 2 worst things you can do. Put off getting taken care of. It is just going to get worse, possibly turn systematic and spread, and be much more difficult to correct the longer you put off getting taken care of. The other thing is taking the jewelry out. A lot of people's misconception that removal of the jewelry is going to magically make everything just go back to normal. The problem with this thinking is how your body heals infections and what happens when you take the jewelry out. Your body heals infections by pushing infected tissue and fluids out through the wound while it replaces it with healthy tissue below. When you remove the jewelry, which is often the only thing keeping those two holes open, they seal, which is an issue with piercings because usually the wound is a lot deeper. So, it will usually trigger one of two things happening. Worst case scenario, it turns into an inward traveling infection where it begins to actually spread in other tissue. If left untreated, it can possibly turn septic or cause permanent tissue damage. More commonly, your body will try to isolate it by developing a cyst or an abscess and then very slowly and very painfully pushing it to the surface. In both cases, you're definitely going to need medical treatment, and it's probably going to involve having it lanced and drained. If you leave the jewelry in, it allows a way for your body to expel the infection. It also usually makes it a little bit more treatable. Now, it's not going to be uncommon for you to see some signs of infection, like discomfort, discolorization, heat, tenderness of touch, inflammation, swelling, often after that first couple of weeks as your body accepts the jewelry and gets over the trauma of the piercing. It's also not uncommon to see a tad bit of bleeding anywhere from 1 to 5 days. Usually just kind of collects around the piercing holes. Most people don't even notice it. So, that's the basics. Aftercare instructions for ear piercings. I plan on doing some of these, more of these in the future to cover various different parts of the body in the body piercings. If you liked what you heard, if you found it helpful and educational, please give me a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more videos on piercing and tattooing, please subscribe. Other than that, have a good day and happy piercing, everybody.